because there are a few people that couldn't make it today, so we wanted to be able to capture this, both our presentation and your questions, because we know that if you're asking questions, the questions you're asking are going to be in general for possibly for other people. So this is a really great opportunity to bring everyone together and also to kind of archive what you're asking, the questions you're asking, the presentation we're making, and make sure we're covering things that are important to you. So hi, welcome. You just mute your speakers for now, or your audio, anything, whatever you're on your phone or your computer. We're going to use this as a, it is interactive. We want to hear from you. You can use the chat box below, or if you have a question, you want to stop us in the presentation anywhere. And this is very informal. That's why we've allowed 2 sessions, 2 one-hour sessions for this, so we can make sure we really address your questions and cover the information. So please, there's a little icon up at the top toolbar on your right, I believe, is a little person holding their hand up, and you can, it's a drop down, you can raise your hand. And Megan is on the phone with us today. Thank you, Megan, for helping out to monitor the chat and anyone raising their hand. So in case we miss you, Megan and I are both going to be watching that so we can address your questions as they come up. But feel free to, again, this is informal. We want to hear from you as we move through this and address your questions on the spot. So with this, I'm going to proceed. We have, again, this is two parts of an orientation. And part 1 is today from 12 to 1, and we'll meet with you again next Thursday, October 5th, same time, 12 o'clock. A new link will be sent to you. Please, after today, throw this one away, because you won't get into the room again if you try the old link. So a new link will be sent to all of you after this meeting today, along with the archive version where you can find this to share with colleagues or anyone else that might want to sit it through this orientation. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen, and we can get started, Karen.
All right, thank you, Jackie. And I just want to point out to everyone who hasn't yet met Megan that she has taken Amy Little's place, and so Megan will be the person who will be following up with you about statistics. And I see 10 of our libraries, this year's libraries online, and I also see a couple of libraries who signed up previously were earlier grant libraries, but the staff there is new, so they're attending this orientation. And I also just want to say we really want you to ask questions, and so if you've got any questions, somebody else probably has the same questions, and the purpose today is to go over the details of the letter of commitment. So I'm going to start out, and I'm happy to say that
right now that I just realized I need to start paying attention to because they got to the important.
Could I just remind everyone to mute their speakers because we're getting a little background noise? Thank you.
Do the webinar, so I got to work. Oh, Sarah's like, yeah, I'm glad to hear you. Better. You sound like yourself. Okay, all right, bye.
I think we had a second person on there for a second. All right, so first of all, the steps that we're going to go through, this matches the letter of commitment, and in addition to sending you the letter of commitment, I've been sending out to you the steps in much greater detail than what's in the letter of commitment. And I've sent everyone now all 12 steps. I sent out the last steps yesterday. So everybody has those steps, and you have to just work at these things at your own pace. And if you have any questions, always be sure and let me know. So the first one is sign the letter of commitment, and that's done by your library director. And basically, it outlines these 12 steps, and it's to ensure that your library director knows what you're doing and understands that their library is making a commitment. And everyone's completed that step, so we can move on to number 2. And number 2 is to introduce yourself to the leaders of your local veteran community. And there are 2 people that you have to meet. First of all is your county veteran service officer, and the second is the CalVet link officer. So every county has a county veteran service officer, although some counties share their veteran service officer. But there are many fewer CalVet link officers, and CalVet has about 11 link officers. These are their field officers, and link is their title. It stands for Local Interagency Network. I can't remember what the C stands for. But anyhow, these folks, especially your county veteran service officer, have to be supporting you, because you, of course, will be referring all the veterans who are ready to apply for their benefits to your county veteran service officer. I'm happy to say that most of our county veteran service officers have been thrilled to have the libraries involved in serving veterans. I think most of them had no idea how many resources the library could provide for veterans in all aspects of their life. And I think everybody should have completed this step by now. And if you haven't, you need to call and make an appointment right away. I know some of the larger counties have a tough time getting in to see their county veteran service officer. And then in addition to working with your county veteran service officer, you will also be, throughout the life of the grant, working with other agencies in your community who are serving veterans. Every community has many, many local agencies, and these agencies are all part of the team who are trying to serve veterans. When you start out, of course, you probably don't have very many connections, although some of you do already have quite a few connections because you've done previous work with veterans through a Cal Humanities project or some other project. But at the end of the year, we expect you to have 5 connections, and we ask for that statistic twice a year. I'm going to tell you right now, it's really easy to get 5 connections. Once you start going to those collaborative meetings, you're going to meet all kinds of other agencies. So if anybody has any questions about 1 or 2, you can type them in, but I think everybody's pretty much got that part behind them. Okay, then the next thing is library materials, and we want you to have a collection of library materials specifically for veterans, and we want you to set it up in an area that's going to be close to your Veterans Resource Center. And this collection really serves 2 purposes. Obviously, it's a resource for veterans and family members and anybody else in the community who wants to use them. But it also serves as a draw to your Veterans Resource Center. So people might come in and see the collection and say, oh, well, what's this collection about? And you want to be sure wherever that collection is displayed to advertise the hours of your Veterans Resource Center. And we've sent you some tools to do that. Then in addition, so then the materials that you're going to purchase, we give you $1,100 to do that. There's a link to the list on our website where you can find suggested titles. If these are our suggested titles, if you already have all those titles, buy some other titles. The $1,100 is not going to buy all the titles on that list, though. And then next year, assuming we get funded again, you will continue to get money for collection development, but it's only going to be $400, and then in subsequent years there isn't any funding. Some libraries pull books about veterans from other parts of their collection and put them all together. Some libraries put stickers on the back to the book. They create their own little Veterans Connected to the Library sticker and put them on the spines of the book. If your library does pre-processing, you can include the cost of pre-processing when you're going to send us the invoice. So there's quite a bit of flexibility here. Then in addition to the books that you're going to purchase, and you're going to be reimbursed for the up to $1,100, and I'll talk about that a little bit later on, we have sent our libraries 2 boxes of CalVet books, and each box has about 50 books. The CalVet resource book is, the 2016, is a very, very important book. It's probably the most important book in your collection. And the reason we send you so many copies is that we want you to give those books away to any veteran who expresses any interest in them. It also serves as the table of contents serves as a checklist for your volunteers and staff to sit down with the veteran and go through and say, do you think you might be eligible for this benefit or that benefit? So most of you should have copies of your books. If you don't have them, send me an email and I'll make sure you get copies of the books, and then sit down and really spend some time familiarizing yourself with that book. Okay, then in addition to that, there are free materials that you can get from CalVet, and the link to order the materials is that second hyperlink in that library materials box. And be sure and order the books. And then finally, we want you to order pamphlets from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is a fairly new federal agency, and they were created after the Great Recession, and they have a department specifically focused on providing service to veterans. And they will do programming in your libraries, and they will also do one-on-one counseling for veterans. So they are something that you really, people that you want to get to know too, because they're a great resource for you. And you know, there's many veterans who could use financial counseling. Okay, then the final thing I want to talk about in terms of library materials is this federal benefits book. This book, the Federal Benefits for Veterans, Dependents, and Survivors 2014 book, was sort of the companion piece to the California Veterans Resource Book at the federal level. And they were organized in similar fashions. They talked about benefits and how veterans could, you know, take advantage of their benefits. The last time that book was published in hardback was in 2014, and the VA has issued a couple of supplements. There's a 2015 and a 2016 supplement, but they're really supplements. They are not complete redos of their books. So unlike CalVet, they don't redo their book every time. So we don't provide copies of that book because we can't get them at a good rate, and plus we have these sort of bibliographic problems of finding the most current edition. So, but we do encourage you to download these books as PDFs. They're available as PDFs, and put them on your website. The CalVet resource book is also available as a PDF, and again, that should be on your website. Okay, then I think we'll move on to library resources. And I mentioned earlier that the work that you're doing in your community is really done in conjunction with many, many other agencies that are serving veterans in your community. So your job is to identify what these agencies are. And there's several ways to do that. One is to get a list from your county veteran service office. Another is to start going to your local collaborative meetings and collecting business cards. But we really want to see you develop that list and put that up on your web page. And then your web page should also contain information about the books that you've collected. It would have copies of the PDFs of the California Veterans Resource Book, links to the federal books, and this is something that you should be working on or pretty much have wrapped up, unless you just came on like within the last month. Now, website work, as we all know, is never done. You have to keep monitoring it, and as you meet more veteran service agencies, you're going to keep expanding it. And we really encourage you to have your volunteers monitor the list. That does a couple of things. It helps them familiarize themselves with what's on the list, and they can check for broken links. I see a question of, can we get a list of exactly everything we need on our website? When I sent out this step, I included a PowerPoint attachment, and that gave examples of categories of things that you should put onto your website. So that would be one way to find out what to include. And then the second is, go ahead and take a look at what other libraries have done. If you go to our webpage and you click on the Veteran tab, and you'll see a list there of all of our libraries, and you'll see a hyperlink. And if you click on that hyperlink, that will take you to all the different libraries' websites, and then you can see how they've chosen to organize this. I'm not going to, nor is Jackie going to be policing you and say, oh, you missed this or you missed that. We've tried to come up with categories of things to put up, but we want this to be organic, something that comes out of your community and your community need. And every library's got different ways that they like to organize information. Okay, thanks, Jordan. All right, then the next thing on this page is the Library Resource Center, and this is the actual physical space for your Veterans Resource Center. It needs to have a desk, a phone, a laptop, the collection of materials that we've talked about earlier, and then the other resources being those pamphlets that you're going to get from CalVet and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and any other pamphlets that you can get from your local veterans agencies. And once you start collecting these things, you're going to find that you have plenty of these things. Now, where should this be and how big should it be? That's completely up to the library. Every library is, has physical different layouts. We do really like it to be close to the front of the library, if at all possible. If it's buried in the back, people are going to have a tough time finding it. And we want to welcome our veterans and let them know about this service. If your physical space means that you don't have a place near the front of your library, then be sure and put signage out in the front of the library saying that there's a Veterans Resource Center. You could use those stand-up cardboard figures that we've sent out to people to hold signs. We've also seen libraries try different things. They've actually moved their centers around. Or one large library that had their Veterans Resource Center on the second floor. For a while, the veterans sat out in the lobby and greeted everybody who walked in. So there's different ways of managing this. A few people actually have their Veterans Resource Center in the lobby, which is very visible, but does have the disadvantage of not providing much confidentiality. And then the next thing, as far as the library resource, and your library is responsible for providing the desk and the shelving and the phone. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Then the next thing is to be thinking about, when is this center going to be open? Now, our goal is to have all of our Veterans Resource Centers be open half as many hours as the library is open. Some libraries have achieved that goal, and some libraries haven't achieved that goal. But when you're interviewing your volunteers, you really want to be thinking about getting those hours filled, and you're going to need quite a few volunteers in order to be successful at this. Also, you should be thinking about when you want the Veterans Resource Center to be open, so it's opened up based on when you think the veterans might visit you, as opposed to when the volunteers are willing to work. So, there's kind of a happy medium there that you have to strike. Okay, there's a question here about can you use funding for plexiglass holders for material on display? Yes, absolutely. There's a small amount of money that's given to all of you for supplies and equipment, and I'll cover that in a little detail, but that's precisely the kind of thing that, that we're looking for. Okay, so any other questions about steps 1 through 5? Okay, so then we're moving on to step 6, which is the technology access. And in order to run a Veterans Resource Center, you have to have a laptop, a printer, a tablet, and a telephone. As I mentioned, that your library is responsible for providing the telephone. That's not an expense that we can pay for. Some libraries have gone ahead and added a line and a phone and a separate phone number. Some haven't handled it that way. Some have gotten portable phones. There's all kinds of different solutions, but that's really something that your library needs to figure out. Now, as far as the laptop and the printer and the tablet, whether or not the grant pays for this or your library pays for this depends upon whether or not you're a CEPA compliant or a non-CEPA compliant library. And CEPA refers to the Child Internet Protection Act, and some libraries have chosen not to comply with the Child Internet Protection Act because they view, this is really an intellectual freedom issue, but they view that's just their policy. I would say this year we have I think we have about 5 or 6 of our libraries that aren't CEPA compliant, and so I'm going to talk a little bit later on about what you can buy because your library still has to provide the laptop, the printer, and the tablet, but we compensate for you. We compensate your library for that with additional funds. Now, why do you have to have a laptop and a printer and a tablet? The laptop and the printer are going to be used chiefly by the volunteers who are working with the veterans. A lot of the work with veterans and their family members is done online. And there's a lot of research involved, and you can't really do this job without having a laptop and a printer. The tablet is more for the veterans who come in and for their family members. And this is a recognition that once you start working with the veteran or the family member, you might find that they need to do some work, some more research, and they just need to have access to a computer. So this tablet is for the, you could just, set them down in the corner and say, here, you can have this, an unlimited amount of time. We recognize that many libraries have limits on how long their computers can be used, and if you get in the middle of researching some complex question about benefits and your time is up in the computer, that can be very frustrating to a veteran, as it is to any library patron. But we're really trying not to frustrate veterans in our service here. The libraries that are CEPA compliant had their tablets shipped out, and I've heard from a number of you that you've received it, and if you've gotten it and haven't emailed me back, let me know. And I also just sent out the passwords and login instructions for those things. Now, while I'm talking about technology, I also want to say that many of our libraries have been very, very generous in terms of working with veterans and making sure that they feel sort of special in terms of library services. Some libraries have set aside an extra computer for the veterans to use, or said on a certain day veterans can use the computers for extended length of time. I know one library, Southgate, Adam, you're here, for a while your library was even opening up extra hours, for a nearby Veterans Resource Center to come and visit you. So, these kinds of services really kind of endear, I think, the library to our veterans, and they're a great service to veterans. But those are things that your library has to decide about. Okay. Oh, Adam says they're still doing it. It's happening tomorrow. Yeah, okay, so you're still doing it on Friday. Very, very nice. Okay, then the next thing will be training and for staff, and then we've got, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit more detail on a separate slide. But before we get to that, I want to talk about volunteer recruitment and training. And so recruitment and training for volunteers is, this, most of you had someone from your library attend the Get Involved training that we just completed. We had 3 sessions of that in different parts of the state, and we really stressed the importance of having volunteers who are willing and engaged to work with us. And we spent a lot of time talking about how to do the recruitment and how to engage the volunteer. But I just want to say again, we cannot do this program in the way in which we want it done, which is in-depth service to a veteran, unless we have volunteers. Don't try to run this program with just staff. It's just not going to work, and it is not the intent of the grant. And if you're going to be in this program, you have to have volunteers in order to make this work. And we'll come back to that one in a little bit more detail later on. And then the next thing is public relations. And since we are an IMLS-funded grant, or LSTA, IMLS is the Institute for Museum and Library Services, and the LSTA, Library Services and Technology Act, is a component. And the money goes, the LSTA money, in our case, comes to the State Library in California, and then the funds are awarded by the State Library, and our fiscal agent is actually the Pacific Library Partnership. So that's who you're going to be sending your invoices to. LSTA has certain requirements for public relations, and we've got a link on there to our public relations toolkit. And for anything that you publish where you are using grant funds, say you hire a program speaker, or you purchase books for a book talk, or you're putting out the PR announcing your grand opening, you need to include certain statements. So it's very important that you look at that PR toolkit. That's not just a nice thing to have. It's something that's required. There's a certain statement that has to go on all the publications that are paid for by our grant. So as far as the big thing, of course, right now for all of you is picking an open date for when you're going to open the Veterans Resource Center. When we had your library director sign the letter of commitment, we said that we wanted everybody to be open no later than December 31st. If you started in August, we'll talk to you about that, but we really want you to be picking your dates. And I know several of you have already selected dates to be opening up, and that's just great. Whether or not you have a soft opening or a formal opening or both, that's up to you. A lot of libraries have a soft opening. They open up a few days ahead of their formal opening. They kind of work out some of the bugs and, gives their volunteers a chance to have a little bit of kind of real experience before it's all formally announced in the media that you use. So a lot of libraries end up doing both, which I think is great. And the other thing is we really want you, if you have a formal opening, be sure to invite all the people in your community to attend this event. There's a whole set of guidelines about having a grand opening, and there's actually suggested lists of people to invite on that list. And the one person I'm going to call out here, well, three people I'm going to call out. One is your congressman or woman. Those people spend a lot of time helping veterans, so they need to be there and understand that the library is a resource. Then you want to invite the state librarian, and then somebody, we want to issue an invitation to CalVet, and Jackie and I can do that for you. And then, of course, you're going to invite all the local people that you've been working with, like your county veteran service officer and all the other agencies. Okay, are there questions about step 6, 7, 8, or 9? think this is where a lot of you are right now. Okay, Jordan's typing something. I've heard an opening date from Roseville, so since his recruitment's going well, super. All right, well, let's go into the next slide then, Jackie. We got a little shout out there for volunteer match. Good. Okay. Then these are the final steps in our project, library programs for veterans. We are requiring that every library would do 2 programs during the grant year for veterans, and the reason we do that is we want to make sure that your Veterans Resource Center is seen and acknowledged by the community, and by having programs, it gives you an opportunity to reach some veterans who you might not be reaching because they don't come in and see you, and it allows you to get the word out about your center and really promote it. And of course, it just provides a service for veterans and their family members and the general public. So this is something you're going to do after your center opens. You know, you've got a lot of other things going on right now, but you know, start to be thinking about when you want to hold these programs. Obviously, they need to be held before the grant year ends, and the grant year ends on June 30th. And if you're going to be using some of your money, then we want to have those funds spent well before June 30th. So you know, you could be thinking about when you want to have them. Now, we have a very general definition of program. And people have done all kinds of different things. They've done author talks. They've done open houses. They've had writing workshops. They've had welcome home events. They've gone to stand downs in their community. So there's a lot of latitude here in terms of what you can do. Okay, so then document sharing. I have to say that though Jackie and I and Megan manage this project, we learn as much from you as you learn and hear from us, and that's because you're sharing your experiences. We really encourage sharing in this environment because there's a lot to learn. Serving veterans is a really complex service. It's something that a lot of libraries haven't done much with before, and so there's just so much to learn about the benefits and you know the different kinds of veterans and their various issues. And so we've created a way to do that, and it's through what we call the Ning account, and that is on our librarian page tab. It's over on the right-hand side. In order to get engaged with that, all you have to do is click on that, and then you sign up and register, and then do, by all means, post the things there. Post your pictures, post your wonderful facts or information or resources that you've found. And if you've got any questions about how it works, you can get in touch with Megan. If you create documents, we like to see those posted there and shared. So please don't be shy about that, because there's so much that we all can learn from each other. And if you're looking for ideas, then this is a good place for you to go. I mean, some people are like, well, what should go on the invitation to the grand opening? Well, we've got samples both in our PR toolkit, and if you look in Ning, you can see pictures of what people had done to their grand openings. And then the final and the 12th step is grant monitoring, and that's statistics, and we'll talk about that in a separate slide. All right, I think we're ready to go on to the next one. Oh, and Megan just typed in, she's definitely available to help people with Ning, and she also wants to remind you all to like Facebook, and there's a link on our webpage, and follow us on Pinterest. All right, now I'm going to go over the library, the budget for this this grant. So starting at the top, I've already mentioned that every library has $1,100 for library materials, and that was step 3. We've talked about that. I think that's pretty straightforward. And then you have $200 for miscellaneous supplies and $125 for display equipment. And that's step 5, and that's, when you're setting up your Veterans Resource Center now. Linda asked us earlier, could she buy some plexiglass holders? And certainly that would be an example of a display equipment. Other things that people have purchased are copy machine paper, or paying for printing supplies, or ink, or there's just all kinds of little things that you can do to make your Veterans Resource Center special. And if you want to combine the $200 and the $125, that's fine with us too. Some people have even used it to buy, a piece of furniture or something like that. So it's really up to you how you want to use that miscellaneous supplies, that display equipment, the 200 and the 125, which equals $325. Okay, then the next thing I want to talk about is material for programs. And in addition to the $1,100 that you get for library materials, we also give you $800 for programs. I mentioned earlier that you have to do 2 programs during this fiscal year before June 30th that are related to veterans services. You can use the money for books. For example, if you wanted to have a book club and talk about a book of interest to veterans, a book discussion group, and say you wanted to buy 20 copies of a book and it was $20 a piece, that would be $400. That's a very legitimate use. Or if you wanted to hire a speaker to come in and give a talk, you could use the money for that. So it really depends upon what kind of programming you want to do, but that's the purpose of those funds. We've seen all kinds of different uses. If you do hire someone who is going to be presenting, make sure that they've got the proper qualifications. And later on, when it's time to do our final reporting, we're going to be requiring the name of that person and some information about what their qualifications are. And it needs to be more than just a veteran. It needs to be somebody who's got some qualifications here. Okay, social media. For all of for all of your events, whether it's the grand opening or the programs or advertising the Veterans Resource Center itself, which needs to be done on an ongoing basis, we really want you to use a combination of traditional media and social media. And what we've found through a number of years of doing this grant is that libraries are really good on using traditional media, but that might not be the way to reach veterans, especially younger veterans. And remember, we're trying to reach veterans and their family members of all ages, from those who've just gotten out of the service and they're in their 20s to people who are in their 80s and 90s. And they all, get their information in different ways. And we have to be very conscious of trying different techniques. And so in an effort to really help promote this, we've given you a budget for your social media. We want you to use this on social media, not traditional media. So an example of how you might use this would be, say you're putting something on your Facebook page, but you want it to reach more people. Then you can pay for a boost, and a boost might be $50 or $100, but that might be money that's very well spent, because if you can reach more veterans and get more clicks, then that's fabulous. And our expert on this is Megan. If you've got any questions at all about how to do this, get in touch with Megan, and if she needs to walk you through it, she can certainly do that. Okay, the
Sharon,
technology.
Karen, can I just say something really quickly? If for any of you that are having really great success with social media, can you please share that with us as well? We'd really like to hear from you how you're using it and the success of it. So please do share all the
yes, and you know, and maybe indicate some of the age groups that you're able to reach with the social media. We think that, you know, we're seeing a lot of veterans who are Vietnam veterans and Korean veterans in World War II, and of course, you know, they're in a period of really high need for their services, but we're not seeing as many younger veterans in our centers, and we want to reach those folks. Okay, we're going to cover technology in a separate slide because that's kind of complex, and then we have sent all kinds of stuff to you, and you should have received these things by now. There is a pull-up banner that is probably about 6 feet tall, and there's a bright orange tablecloth that came to you from Jackie mailed those out. Business cards, bookmarks, flash drives, those are the dog tags. There's tablets for CEPA compliant libraries. Then we've got the cutouts. There's a Air Force soldier and a female soldier. Then we've got those. We've got a flag that has the 5 branches, and then we have wind socks with the 5 branches. And you should have all those things. Oh, in addition to that, you should have your CalVet books. If you don't have any of those things, email me, and I'll go back and figure out what happened to you, to your order. Now, I do want to say one thing about the flash drives. The purpose of these is not just to go to an event and give them away. They're a little expensive for that. The purpose is when a volunteer or staff member is working with a veteran, and the veteran wants to save their research, or they've created a resume, or they want to save some links to some pages, then you can give them one of these flash drives, and that's the purpose of the flash drives. Okay, and then the final thing in the budget is the staff backfill, and so we recognize that setting this up is a lot of work for your staff. And your libraries are paying a lot of staff people to do this. And so at the end of the year, sometime in late spring, I'm going to send out an email, and it's going to say it's time for you to claim your funds for staff. And these would be the people who might be working on the desk so that you're free to work on this. So, for example, if your library had to hire some extra help in order for you to have some desk time to work on this project, or to be out in the community meeting with veterans, then that's the purpose of this. You can also count PR time. If your library has a PR department and they spent time, or your technology department spent time getting things set up. It could be people at any level who have spent some time working on this project. But whatever amount we give you, and it might be $5,800, it might be $6,000, we want you to spend that full thing. So, be keeping some notes now about who's working on the project and providing support to this project, so that when it comes time to claim that, you can say, oh, I had 5 hours of PR, or my tech people spent about 10 hours, or the reference people spent, 5 hours creating a website, whatever it is. We want you to have something legitimate on which to base this claim. Okay, are there questions about the budget? And I'm going to go into the technology piece in just a, Brett's typing something. Let's see what his question is. I'm going to go into questions about technology and CEPA versus non-CEPA in greater detail on the next slide.
And just so everybody's aware, CEPA is not determined by the state of California. That's a federal. We're just have to comply with the IMLS and the federal funds that's regulating. That's the regulatory arm, not the state of California.
So is the $5,800 for all staff? Is it part of the overall budget? Well, yes. It's each library has around. We don't ever. I don't know. We already told us, but it costs about $10,000 to set up each site. That's kind of the investment in this grant. And so some of the money is the library materials, some of it's the supplies, some of it's the technology that you're going to claim, some of it's the backfill of the staff. Brett, if I didn't answer your question, you can type in something else. Okay,
right,
so let's move to the
correct.
next.
$5,800 is approximately $5,800 is dedicated just for staff backfill.
Yeah. Now your library might have spent much more money on getting this project set up than that, but it's a one-time expense, and once you get it set up, in succeeding years there won't be nearly the staff investment in this. Okay, so here's how the technology works. On the left-hand side, we have the laptop and the printer, we have the tablet, we have the phone, and other, and we're going to explain how this works. So if you are a CEPA-compliant library, and if you don't know, let me know and I'll tell you, or you can check with your director, they'll know. You then are going to submit an invoice for the laptop and the printer. And that invoice can be for up to $1,050. And based on the bills I've seen, most libraries are able to very easily get a laptop and a printer for that kind of money, and then they get reimbursed for the full amount. If it turns out to be $1,060 or $1,000 or $980, that's fine. You don't have to spend that amount. And if you need to go over a little bit, that's okay too. But kind of aim for that general amount. And again, a reminder: the laptop and the printer go in the Veterans Resource Center, and they're for use by your volunteers. And if you want to have them take the laptop out to a community event, that's fine. If you are a non-CEPA compliant library, then your library purchases that equipment. Now, a tablet is, if you're a CEPA compliant library, the grant provides it. By way of an example, this year we bought Samsung Chromebooks, and we configured them so that when they open up on our grant web page. And these are intended for the veterans and family members who visit your center to use to continue their research. If you want to take the tablet out to a community event, say you go to some kind of a community event and you want to provide services, like if you went to a stand down or something and you wanted to have library service, again, a very legitimate use of that tablet. If you're not a CEPA compliant library, we still want you to have a tablet for the same reasons I just mentioned it, but your library has to purchase that. The phone, again, your library pays for the phone whether you're CEPA compliant or not CEPA compliant. And then finally, for the libraries that are not CEPA compliant, we recognize that they have had to make an investment buying a laptop and a printer and a tablet, and we don't give them any money for that. So we say, well, you have up to $1,500 in lieu of technology. So you can purchase other things that you need. So for example, if you needed some shelving for your library, or you wanted to buy a table, or you wanted to buy some seating for your Veterans Resource Center, I shouldn't just say for your library, it has to go in a Veterans Resource Center, then that $1,500 can be used for those things. You cannot, however, go out and buy a laptop and a printer and send it to Phil, because we won't be able to pay that. It has to be for something that is not that's not technology. It can't be anything that connects to the internet. And in this day and age, lots of things connect to the internet, and so you have to be really careful about what you're purchasing. And I have to be really careful when I'm authorizing this $1,500 for payment, that it's not something that connects to the internet. Okay. So Lisa, you were, yeah, okay. We'll talk privately about your question. Okay, so invoicing now. Invoicing. How are we doing on time? I can get another 10 minutes. Training. We've got 3 categories here. We've got training, and training can. When you attend a training session, we'll use this most recent session where we had the volunteer stuff as an example. The grant covered most of the training costs, and we tried to keep it simple by paying for the hotels and things like that. But there were some small things that most people had to claim. An example would be they claimed mileage because they drove their personal car as opposed to a city or county vehicle, or they had some parking incidental fees, or they had a train fee that they purchased. If you paid for the cost, then you send the invoice to me, and then I send it on to the Pacific Library Partnership. In some cases, there's something that the grant doesn't pay for that the library purchases, and the most common example of this I've seen is an airline ticket. Somebody buys an airline ticket and the library does the purchasing. So now the grant owes, and if we said we were going to pay for the airline ticket, now the grant owes the library money, and that invoice is going to come from the library. If on a trip there was some things that you paid for and some things that your library paid for, we want 2 separate invoices, because there's going to be 2 separate payees. There's going to be you and there's going to be your library. So there have to be 2 separate invoices. And let's see what else about that. Oh, and the other thing about these training invoices is we want them submitted right away. So you can't, you know, when training happens, turn that invoice in right away. Don't wait 6 months. We want to pay these invoices immediately. Okay, then there's going to be the whole category of items purchased, and that's going to include the things that we've been talking about, like your library collection. It's going to include supplies that you buy. It's going to include equipment. You know, the $325. It's going to include, if you're a SEPA compliant library, the printer and the laptop. And there's going to be an invoice, which I'm going to show you in just a minute, what that invoice looks, and all that stuff is going to go on that invoice. And we want one invoice. There's 13 of you libraries. The libraries from last year, there's another 15 of those. They're also eligible to claim some money, so that now we're looking at 28 libraries that are turning in invoices to the Pacific Library Partnership. And if you turn in an invoice for every little thing that you buy, it's just going to be overwhelming. So we want you to keep track of all your expenses, and around March 15th, we're going to say, turn in all your invoices, and this is why you got to have your money spent. Turn in all your invoices, and we're going to send checks to you. And so set up a folder, start making yourself a list of all the things that you're purchasing for this grant so that you can claim that money. Now the staff backfill, that's going to be claimed at a later date. Lisa's asking about that. And oh yeah, okay. Let me answer this question from David about programming. Yeah, the items purchased. Yes, that's going to include your programming. So if you bought books or if you paid for a speaker, that's going to go on that items purchased invoice. Staff backfill, that claim is going to be made later on, and it's probably going to be, we're probably going to say around April 15th or May 1st, start sending those invoices in. And the reason it's later is because if there's any leftover money from the items purchased, then that's not going to, looks like it's not going to be sent. Then we can give libraries a little bit more money in staff backfill. So that's why when I say to you in an email, time to turn in those items purchased things, we don't want you to take 2 months to do it. We want you to do it right away and get it done so that we can give everybody a little bit more money in staff backfill. And I know all of your libraries appreciate that. Okay, next slide. So this is an example of an item purchase invoice. And I mentioned earlier, we're just going to go through this, but you can see that it says specific library partnership. That's our fiscal agent. That's where you're going to send this to. This is going to come free. It's going to have our name on it, Veterans Connect. It's going to say supplies and equipment. You're going to type your library name in, and then you're going to type in the item. There's a column for quantity, and then whatever it is, and then the cost. And you're going to itemize all the different things. And then you're going to total it up, and then reimbursements will be made by check payable to the name requested below and sent to the following address. So it's going to be name, address. So if this is you, you're going to put your, no, never mind. I'm not going to talk about training. It's going to be your library name because your library is going to be claiming this. So your library's name, your library's address, phone number, date, and signature. And all that needs to be filled in. Don't assume because you put up there a library and further on in the top that we know. We don't know where your business office is or where you want the check. So all that stuff has to be filled out completely. And this form doesn't have a link on our webpage because we send the link out to you when it's time to make the claim.
You don't even have to think about it yet.
Yeah.
Just keep
Now,
those
one
receipts.
thing, just keep your receipts, keep a folder, keep a list of what you bought because we want you to claim the maximum amount. If you don't have receipts, you can't claim this stuff. Oh, and then the other thing is Specific Library Partnership also wants to see packing invoices. So save your packing invoices. Now, all the stuff that Jackie and I have already sent, you know, all the tablecloths and all that stuff, that was paid for by the grant. You don't need to have any packing receipts for that. But for your library materials and any other things you buy, keep those receipts. If you can't find a packing slip, take a picture of the box. People have been very creative about how to do this.
And we're down to 3 minutes. We're down to 3 minutes.
All right. Well, maybe we'll come back to this. How many more slides do we have?
This one would be complete the items purchased. So maybe we just finish this.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we've talked about most of this. You're going to submit one invoice. It has to include the bills, the packing slips, and then it just gives the dates. And you also have to make sure that you purchase things that are eligible for LSTA funding. So if you have any questions at all, please ask Jackie and me. We don't want you to buy something expecting to be reimbursed, and then we say, oh, I'm sorry, we can't pay for that. Okay? And then we may I just want to say we may separate out the invoice and have a specific invoice this coming year for library materials because I think that's going to create less confusion on for Pacific Library Partnership. Okay, Jackie.
Good. Great. Well, this was terrific. Thank you so much. We had a great attendance today, and we really appreciate your questions. We'll be closing for now, and like I said, this is recorded. It'll be archived, and I'll send you the link to that as well as the link for next week, Thursday, October 5th at noon at 12 o'clock. Oh, sorry, October 6th. That's the date, Thursday, October 6th. So thanks to everyone, and have a good week, and we will see you next week. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
It does take a lot of time.